Middle-earth: Shadow of War is definitely one of the most exciting games probably releasing this year. I mean, I know Lord of the Rings fans and action RPG fans alike have been waiting for this one for quite a while. It's a lot of hype.
Yes, and with good reason. There's a lot to love in the Middle-earth games, but one of the most important aspects of this series is the immersive visuals. Correct,
and Erik actually had a chance to catch up with Phil Straub, one of the creative visionaries behind Shadow of War. Let's see what he found out.
All right, thanks guys. Yes, it's true. I am here at Monolith, the creators of Shadow of War, and I'm joined by Phil Straub. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
So, Phil, what exactly is your role on Shadow of War?
Sure, I am the director of art of the studio, and basically I work with all the teams of the studio in the visual development of our products.
So what exactly is it that brought you to Monolith?
Definitely working on the Middle-earth IP. Huge fan of Lord of the Rings, huge fan of the books, the films, the illustrations. Just I grew up with that stuff, so I love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't pass up on an opportunity to work on something like that, for
sure. Totally, agree.
So this is such a massive, epic project. Can you tell me how this game has evolved from your initial expectations and plans to what it's become in its final form?
It's an interesting question. I mean, you know, game development, it's always an evolution. You know, you come out, you have your plans in the beginning, and then they evolve as you kind of work through them. But I think, you know, going into the game, we had a pretty clear idea of what we wanted to accomplish. You know, the goals were to take that solid foundation of Shadow of Mordor and then just, you know, expand it greatly across our environments, across the Nemesis system, across our characters, just everything.
How much of what you perceived from reading the books and knowing Lord of the Rings before versus the films are you able to aesthetically bring to these games?
It's really about making sure that we understand that solid foundation of the lore that we're working with, the Shadow of Mordor foundation, and then sort of building on top of that.
What is the technology behind all of this?
Yeah, so I think the place to start is, you know, Shadow of Mordor, when it was developed, was in the very early stages of the console transition. And so there was some things that we could do at that time, but there was also some things that we just had to leave on the table. We built a foundation, a good foundation, we believe, and then it's like, what can we do to improve that? So from a technology standpoint, there's a couple of big things that we did. The first thing is we introduced what we call a true PBR pipeline, so physically based rendering. And that just, in its simplest terms, means that the lighting is representing true real world properties in terms of the way that the light reacts to all of the objects in the world. So big win there. We get more realism with this physically based rendering system. The trick though is now that it is PBR, all of the lighting needs to speak very closely with the materials. And so there was a lot of work that we did in terms of setting the benchmark for what our value ranges needed to be in our characters and our environments to ensure that the lighting would work and speak to that correctly. So that's one big thing, and it's had a huge visual improvement in the quality of the game. Some other things that were developed, our terrain system was completely rewritten, and with that comes a lot more processing power, but also a lot more artistic possibilities. The visual improvements there were big, and then we did some improvements on our foliage system as well. That was also rewritten, and so it's a much more efficient tool to use, and it allows us to get more greater variety in our foliage types. And there's just a whole host of other things that you know, the engineers worked with, the tech art team and the art team, very collaborative effort to just, you know, up the visuals in every way we possibly could.
Well, the scope of work that has gone into this game and the attention to detail is just mind-blowing. I cannot wait for people to finally experience Shadow of War when it comes out. Well, thanks so much, Phil, for taking some time to talk to me today.
Very cool, thanks guys. All right, Middle-earth: Shadow of War may be one of the biggest games releasing this fall, but it's not the only game coming out. Here's Cole to tell us about some hidden gems you won't want to miss.
Welcome, GameStop, to this month's inexplicably spooky Hidden Gems segment. As you may have surmised from the royalty-free generic thunder sound effect and vaguely eerie music, this month we will be exploring the extent of panic-inducing horror that standards and practices will allow us to get away with. So pretty much imagine if R.L. Stine wrote short segments about video games instead of mediocre children's books. Now, without further ado, Yeah, you know what? I changed my mind on this whole thing. Yeah, doing that voice the entire time is gonna be kind of a lot. So, Sean, you wanna just queue up a normal one? Okay, cool. Sorry, everybody, that one's on me. First, let's talk about Invisible Hours, the upcoming virtual reality game that admittedly would have fit wonderfully into a Halloween-themed segment being published by GameStop's own in-house publisher, GameTrust. This compelling mystery thriller set in a hopefully Eddie Murphy-free mansion is truly unique in that the player is only able to directly interact with the environment, not the characters involved in the narrative. All 7 intersecting storylines pertaining to the 7 in-game characters will unfold as it will in real time, regardless of whether or not you are there to experience it. This emphasizes the importance of your choice on who or what to explore, as the information you receive is purely dependent on where you choose to go and how closely you're paying attention. Because of their distinct breed of innovative game making, it is now my honor to be awarding Tequila Works with the first and only Cole Watson gold-plated low-resolution JPEG award for its likelihood of probably being a cool game. Hang it in your office with pride, boys. You earned it. This soft reboot of Clue will be available on October 10th for the PlayStation VR, HTC Vive, and Oculus Rift, so dust off your inspecting monocles and get ready to Sherlock around the virtual mansion. Sherlock's a verb, right? I think people will get that. Up next, we have Raid World War II, which is yet another World War II game made to ensure that we never forget our history. Or maybe the exact opposite of that, since we've made like a bunch of World War II games, most of which aren't historically accurate. Whatever, they're still fun. You play as 4 characters with unique classes and skill trees who've been thrust out of a Nazi concentration camp and into dubiously over-the-top combat scenarios based on actual events in order to, big surprise here, take down Hitler and his Nazi regime and claim the allegedly endless Nazi treasure all for yourselves. So this is kind of like the opposite of Raiders of the Lost Ark, in that the Nazis already have the treasure and you're taking it from them as a self-insert Harrison Ford. Now, Harrison Ford isn't in this game, but John Cleese is in it though. How awesome is that? He dons the role of a secret intelligence agent who sends your 4-man army to objective-based raids, so he's more or less the driving force behind the narrative. Some of you look confused. You would know John Cleese. He's been in a ton of stuff. Hey, bring him up, Sean. Wow, okay, that's not what I was expecting. Was that the top search result? Sean, are you using Bing? How did you even find that? Either way, Raid World War II will be tactically blasting itself from the actual past this October 10th. Coming in at number 3, we have .hackgu Last Recode, whose name I can only assume can be put into HTML to generate a web page of Wayne Knight laughing at you. This title, with a tedious-to-type title, is a trilogy remaster of .hackgu, which was a series of 3 PS2 games based on the anime series .hack Roots. However, anyone who said it was merely a trilogy remaster just now is an idiot, because this game also includes, amid a myriad of new features and improvements, an entirely new 4th volume to the series. These games are interesting in that they're a collective simulated MMORPG, meaning it's made to look and feel like one, but it actually isn't. You're playing offline and completely alone, a topic about which I am very familiar. Oh, what? No, it's by choice. I mean, I'm not lonely. I mean, most of the time, I don't... Shut up. The story revolves around Haseo, our blank slate anime protagonist set to hunt a player named Tri-Edge as an act of vengeance for his friend Shino, who has been put into an IRL coma by the aforementioned Tri-Edge character. Now, before you say anything, okay, no, this is not pretty much the same thing as Sword Art Online. They're totally different. That is, of course, if you subscribe to the same headcanon as me, and that SAO's second arc never happened. Pre-order this one now before you hopefully don't get wrapped up in a gross love triangle this November 3rd. As someone who's extremely picky when it comes to the genre of horror, this next title really excites me. As friend of the show Greg Miller so eloquently and shoutily presented as a thesis statement last month, 2017 has been a killer year for games thus far, and the horror genre is no exception. With the pleasant surprise of Resident Evil 7 and my personal favorite horror anything of the year thus far, Little Nightmares, shining brightly with its clever gameplay and writing, it's an awesome time to be a horror fan, and The Inpatient looks like it will fit nicely into this year's motif of not being terrible. Serving as a prequel to 2015's choice-driven Until Dawn, Supermassive Games has meticulously crafted this VR title to completely immerse and subsequently scare the pants right off of you. Now, I'm a total dork when it comes to audio, so when I found out that this game utilizes binaural audio to accurately simulate human hearing using a microphone that looks a bit like this, let's just say that my RE20 received phantom power, know what I'm saying? I know only 4 people are gonna know what I'm saying, but it's worth it in my book, which I would not recommend reading. Now, I believe that horror is best left ambiguous, so I don't want to go over too many story details on this one, but let's just say it takes place in a sanatorium during a time in which you definitely wouldn't want to be in a sanatorium, because nobody knew what they were doing. They were just electrocuting stuff and recording the results, and half the time they didn't even do that right. The Inpatient will be making you regret every decision that led you to playing this nightmare-inducing hellscape on November 21st. Finally, we have Friday the 13th, the Kickstarter-funded online multiplayer game based on the hit slasher film franchise that you're probably already sick of hearing about. The game's been available digitally for a few months now, but Jason Voorhees and his wacky camp counselor pals will be panicking their way into the physical medium on, you guessed it, Friday, October 13th. Now, if you're not familiar with the title, first I want to say, hey buddy, how was your nap?
You were asleep for a minute there and you missed a ton of stuff, but don't you worry, I'm gonna give you the highlights. Dogs are still awesome, that's the same. There were these things called Fidget Spinners that everyone loved and then loved ironically. Now we're pretty much done with them. One of the 2 Stephen King movies was good, that was expected. And pretty much everyone on the internet is still really mad, so there you go. Friday the 13th is a round-based multiplayer game in which one player dons the role of Jason, whose objective is to kill as many counselors as possible, while the rest of the players are made to be camp counselors, whose objective is to be as not killed by Jason as possible. Now, the intrigue of the counselor gameplay is that it is not your objective to help all other players escape. Your goal is for you to escape. The game's received some mixed reception, but I'm personally a fan of it, even if it's due in part to my bias of loving Adam Sessler, who held a consulting role during its production. Pre-order this one now and pray that Jason doesn't slice you up like a Christmas ham, or a regular ham for that matter. That's all I have for you this month, but before I go, I invite anyone who is interested to yell at me on social media. You can tweet me at ColeIsNugatory, which you can see written below in beautiful Comic Sans. There we go. I've had some amazing interactions with a lot of you terrific viewers who were kind enough to reach out to me, so much so that I want to create a space in which we can all hang out and talk about games, movies, records, comic books, whatever's on your mind, really. So hit me up, let's hang out. For more information on any of these titles, speak with a guest advisor, or just scream into the eternal void until you cease to hear your own frenzied cries. I've got to stop doing that.
Thank you so much, Cole. We'll tell you about the newest Metroid, Mario, and Pokemon adventures when we return from this short break. See you in a second.